Hey guys, welcome back. So we will continue where we left off with basic JavaScript from freeCodeCamp. Okay, let's get into it. For this exercise, we need to modify the function so that if a or b are less than 0, the function will immediately exit with a value of undefined. Okay, so we will write an if condition here. So we want if a is smaller than 0 or b is smaller than 0, then in this case we want to return undefined, okay, which is a keyword. Remember, this is a keyword, not a string. Else then we should okay, let's try this. Okay, perfect. Now we want to do this counting cards. Do not reset. Okay, so let's look into this. This is a game of blackjack, so a player can gain an advantage over the house by keeping track of the relative number of high and low cards remaining in the deck. Okay, so we're doing card counting. Having more high cards remaining in the deck favors the player, so each card is assigned a value according to the table below. When the count is positive, the player should bet high. When the count is 0 negative, the player should bet low. Okay, so +1 for cards 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0 for 7, 8, 9, and -1 for 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace. Okay. We are writing a card counting function which will receive a card parameter, and which can be a number or a string, and increment or decrement the global count variable according to the card's value. Okay. So equals 0. Okay. So we need to return bet if the count is positive, or hold if the count is 0 or negative. And we need to modify the count variable here. Okay, let's get into this. So in this case, it's better if we use the switch case. So we want to cover all these cases 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, and then 10, J and Jack, Queen, King, and Ace. Okay, so we're going to do a switch on the variable card. Okay, and then first case is going to be 2, and then case 3, case 4, case 5, case 6, and for all of these we want to do count. So we want to do count plus plus and then break. Okay, let's do now case 7, case 8, case 9. I might have a syntax error here. So in this case we just want count to stay the same, so we just break, and then for case 10, case J, case Q, case K, and case A, we want count minus minus, and break. Okay, let's try this. Maybe there's some syntax error. I'm used to Python. Okay, so you will write a card counting, which will receive a card, and then increment or decrement the global count. Okay, and then the function should return a string with the current count and the string bet if the count is positive, or hold if the count is 0 or negative. Okay, so we need to change this return here. Now, if count if count is positive, then we need to return the string with the current count and the string bet. Okay, so return let's try to write this first like this. And let's console log the count first, just so we know what we are doing. And then if the count is positive, so else, okay, so else should cover if the count is negative or 0. We should return hold. Okay. Let's run this. So the count starts at 0. For 2, it is incrementing 1. Okay. Let's run a test first. So to card sequence 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 should return 5 bet. Okay, let's try something here. I don't know how to convert okay, so I don't remember how to convert a number to string, but I think JavaScript should do it by itself since it does type coercion, so this one should be able to work. Let's remove this console.log here. So we want to show the count, a space, and bet. Okay, and let's return here count plus. If this doesn't work, there should be a method to string or something. Oh, okay, this one works. Perfect. Okay, now we are going to talk about JavaScript objects. So they are similar to arrays, but instead of using indexes to access and modify their data, we use properties. Okay, so we want these objects to store data in a structured way. We can do this to represent real-world objects. Okay, so this is how an object looks like in JavaScript. Okay, let's make an object that represents a dog called myDog, which contains the properties name, a string, legs, tails, and friends. Okay, we can set the object's properties to whatever values we want as long as name is a string. Okay, let's do it the same like we have here the cat. So we're going to have name, and this is going to be pop puzzles. I don't know. So this is the name. Legs is going to be a number 4, and then tails is going to be a number 1, and then friends, we want friends to be an array. I'm going to leave this empty at the moment. Let's run this. Okay, perfect. Now, how do we access object properties? Using the dot notation. Okay, so we can access it using the dot notation, but also the bracket notation. This is similar to a Python dictionary if you know some Python. Okay, so we need to read in the property values of test object using dot notation and set the variable has hat value equal to the object property hat, and also the shirt value to the object property shirt. Okay, we need to change this line. So hat value is going to be okay. So test object, we are going to access the value hat. Okay, and shirt value is going to be dot shirt. Let's run this. Okay, perfect. Okay, now we need to use the bracket notation. Entry value is going to be this. So inside brackets, put the name of the property, and string value is going to be, of course, this one. Let's run this. Okay, perfect. Continue with the next one. Now, how to access object properties with variables. Okay. So if we want to, when the property's name is collected dynamically during the program execution, okay, something like this. This is the object with the property, and then we do this function prop prefix str, or s is equal to prop, and then return s plus string. So okay, so we are modifying the properties name here from prop name to some prop. Okay. Okay. Now we are going to do something like this. We want to use the player number variable to look up player 16 in test object using bracket notation, then assign the name to the player variable. Okay, so we have player to look up the player 16. This is going to be test object 16, and then player 16 okay. So let's look at the example here. So my breed is equal to So we have a variable dogs right here, an object dogs with these properties, and now we are accessing the dog hunter. No, we want to add this and var mybreed is equal to dogs my dog. Okay, so I think I misinterpreted here the requirement. So we want to access the player number 16 by using a variable. So the variable player number should store 16, which is the property in this case. And then we need to do something like this. Player number. Now player number, since it stores 16, the property 16, we can use it to access the name Montana right here. Okay, let's run this. Okay, let's get on with it. Now, updating object properties. We want to, when we update properties, just like updating any other variable. So here is an example. So let's update its name. So we can do it like this. Just access the property using the name, using dot notation or bracket notation. Okay, seems easy. Just update the my dog object's name property. My dog dot name. Let's make it equal to happy coder. Sorry. Okay. Let's run this. Perfect. Now we can add new properties to a JavaScript object. Okay, so let's see how we add a bark property to our dog. Okay, so the bark property should store bow wow. Okay. We want to do the same for my dog here. Okay, let's try this. So my dog, we want to add the property bark, so let's do it like this, and this needs to be equal to woof. Let's run this. Okay, now we need to delete properties from a JavaScript object, so we can use the delete keyword here. Okay, seems pretty straightforward. Let's delete the tails property. Okay, let's just do this. My dog dot tails. Okay, let's get on with this. Now we need to use objects for lookups. Okay, so objects can also be thought as key value storage, like a dictionary. Okay, so we need to convert the switch statements into an object called lookup and use it to look up val and assign the associated string to the result variable. Oh, okay. So need to take all this switch and make it an object called lookup. Let's do this. So let's do something like this. Don't forget the semicolon. And we want the case as a key or property and the result as a value. Okay. Let's write this. This is going to be Adams. So we want to do the same for all the cases. Let's copy this so we can have the structure. So for Bravo, we want Boston. Okay, for Charlie, we want Chicago. Delta, we want Denver. Oh, we have two more, Easy and Frank. Okay, let's copy this. Echo is Easy. Echo Easy. Maybe let's put this here. And Foxtrot Frank. Let's make this Frank. Okay, now we can remove all this. And then we need to make the result equal to lookup. The value is going to be the key, so something like this should do it. Let's go and run this. Okay, perfect. Now about testing objects for properties. Okay, so we need to check if the property of a given object exists or not. We can do this with using the method hasOwnProperty by giving the property name. Okay, returns true or false. Okay, great. Let's return some. So we need to change this function here to return true or false if an object passed to the function object contains a specific property. Okay, so we can do this with using object.hasOwnProperty and the name of check prop. So we are checking this object if it has a property with this name. Okay. Okay, wait just a second. Has own property. Okay, let's see. So this is the object. This one should work. Oh, okay. Oh, so we need. Okay, I forgot about the other cases. So if not return, we need to find not found. So let's do this. If this is going to be the if condition, and then we are going to return true. We need to return the property value. So object dot check prop. And if it doesn't exist, I'm going to cover this with an else. We need to return not found. Oh, okay, I forgot about all that part. Okay, let's run this. In this case, maybe it's better to do it like this, using the bracket notation. Okay, great. Now, about manipulating complex objects. Okay, so when we want to use a flexible data structure, the object allows for arbitrary combination of strings, numbers, booleans, arrays, functions, and objects. So maybe this one would be a complex data structure. Our music, having artist, title, release year formats as properties, gold. Okay. So whole object all data in property. We need to place a comma after every object in the array. Okay, so what we need to do in this case is we have this object, my music, or this array which has objects inside, and we need to add a new album to the my music array. Okay, let's copy this because we want to add another object to this array. This is let's create fire neighborhood, if I remember. This was released maybe 2010, I don't really remember. We don't want gold. Formats, release year, artist, and title. Okay, so we added a new record here, a new album, sorry. Okay, let's run this. Perfect. Now, how do we access nested objects? So, to access the myStorage object and assign the contents of the glovebox property to the glovebox contents. Okay, use dot notation for all properties where possible, otherwise bracket notation. So we want to access the glovebox for this object. So first, to myStorage is an object and it has a car property, and then the car property stores another object who has an inside property, and that inside property also stores an object. Okay, let's try to write this. So first, to get the car object, we use the car property, and now to access the inside object, we're going to use again the inside property, and now to access the glove box, let's do something like this. Okay, it's the same as with nested arrays, but we're not using index numbers but properties. Okay, we need to use we need to use dot notation. Okay, let's do some of these with dot notation. So dot car dot inside, and I'm going to use glove box as bracket notation because we have a space here. Okay, that should do it. Let's continue. Now about accessing nested arrays. Oh, okay, I mentioned that, but I couldn't remember if we had done it in freeCodeCamp. We need to retrieve the second tree from the variable myPlants using objects dot and array bracket notation. Okay, so the second tree from the variable myPlant. Okay, so we want the object about trees, and then we need this second tree here. Okay, so we have an array of objects. To access the second object, we need to use the index. So myPlants is an array, and to access the second object, we need to use the index 1. So now we are here, and in here, this is an object. It has a property list which stores another array inside with the trees, with an array of strings. So to access this property list, we use dot notation, and then to access, so now we are here, we have this array, and to access the second tree, let's use bracket notation with index 1. Okay, let's run this. Okay, perfect. So record collection. Okay, let's do this, the last one for today. Okay, so we have a JSON object. Don't worry about that. I think it will be explained later. Representing a part of your musical album collection. Each album has several properties and a unique ID number as its key. Okay, not all albums have complete information. We need to write a function which takes an album ID like 2548, a property, prop, and a value like Addicted to Love to modify the data in this collection. If prop isn't tracks and value isn't empty, update or set the value to the records album property. Okay. There are several rules for handling complete data. Okay. Okay, so we need to change only this code right here and return a collection. So we take an ID, a property, and modify the data. Okay. So the collection is an object which has properties. So the property in this collections object is the ID. So, and then each ID stores another object which is an album, and it has also its own properties like album, artist, tracks. Okay, and then when we get an ID, we can access that album using collection and the bracket notation of the ID and property and value. Okay. So we need to do this update records for this ID. We need to give So we want to update album with this ID and update its property artist, giving it the name ABBA. Okay, let's try to write this. So to access the album, we can do something like this. For album, it's going to be collection. So yes, collection, and then give ID. Okay, so now we have the album stored right here. Okay, now let's check if prop isn't tracks and value isn't empty. Let's cover this case. Okay, let's write this down. Now if prop isn't equal to tracks and sorry I'm still using Python syntax, and value is not empty, we need to update or set the value for that record album's property. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So let's maybe access it on the fly here. So we want to access collection -id dot and then we want to access the property. So we are in this and we want to update it. Going to be value. So what we are doing right here, we're accessing an album and then a property of that album and updating it, as long as it's not tracks. Say okay. So let's try to maybe add a console log here to see what it has already done. Collections collection without them. Okay, so we want to update record 5439 and we have added the artist ABBA, just like we want in this case. Okay, so this covers the property. Okay, this one is done right now. Let's try to run to see what is missing. Okay, we want to update the record. Okay, now if prop is tracks but the album doesn't have a tracks property, create an empty array before adding the new value to the album. Okay, now let's cover another case. Else if property is equal to tracks but the album doesn't have a tracks property. Okay, so how do we check if the album doesn't have a tracks property? Let's write an and here. And now how do we access the album? We do collection -id and we use the function has own property and then check if it has the property tracks. Okay, so this So we want this to be not true. So I think this one should work in JavaScript. I don't remember. Create an empty array before adding the new value to the album's corresponding property. Okay, so let's write the code inside here. Let's create an empty array. Okay, so now we want to add this value. Let's see. So now we want to do tracks dot push value. So we want to push into this array the value, which is going to be, I think, a track, a string, and we want to try to save it now, collection ID, and then prop. This is going to be the tracks. Let's try to run this. Let's try to do this for, let's run this for ABBA tracks and then test. Okay, this seems to be working fine. As you can see right here, for ABBA, we have an album ABBA Gold, and we have tracks a test right here. Okay, that seems to be working. Now we covered this one. Now if the property is tracks and value isn't empty. Okay. Okay, let's cover this case. If property is tracks, let's make this a bit wider so maybe the code looks better here. If prop is tracks, but the album doesn't have a tracks, but the if property is tracks and value isn't empty. Okay. So value is different from empty. We want to push the value onto the end of the album's existing tracks array. Okay, let's do this. So collection ID and prop, this will give us access to the tracks array, and we want to push the value at the end. Okay, and now we have another case we want to cover. If prop if value is empty, maybe we can just leave an else here because we are covering, yeah, I think the else should cover this one. We need to delete the given property. So if value is empty in this case, we need to delete the given property from the album. Okay. Now we need to delete collection ID and the name of the property. Okay. Let's see. Let's run this. Okay, that did it. Okay, just make sure you look at this code, try to solve it yourself first, and we will continue the rest of the exercises in the next video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye bye.